there's somebody that passed away a while back that everybody knew their name. When he died, and I was getting ready to speak the session, and the two boys came up, the two sons, and they said to the pastor, "Don't you dare say that he was a good husband. Don't you dare say that he was a good father. Don't you dare say he was even a good CEO." And they went through all the reasons why. There was two opportunities in between that happened, and I would have never ended up being here if I wasn't willing to jump and take that risk when everything was comfortable.
Well, that comfort that you describe, I've called the seduction of success for a long time.
But I knew what it meant. To do that right, I was going to have to be gone 80% of the time. And I said, no, I don't want to miss what I'll never get back again. Yeah. There's no amount of money that's worth missing that.
Welcome back, everybody, to Flipping the Lid. Man, we continue to get world-class guests, and we continue to be able to flip open the lid and be able to dive into real, raw stories. It's funny, on pre-show, sometimes I have an opportunity to get an insight into somebody's life in a way that I totally don't expect, and that happened today. But what I'm really excited about today is that I've had the opportunity to spend time with Carl in the past, and his transparency, his openness, his approach to life was just something that was really grounding, and I was inspired by. He's somebody that doesn't have a problem talking about the things that have happened in his past, but he's also been somebody that's established a great level of success in his life, and through the course of his career has been involved in more than 7 organizations on more than 4 continents to be able to 2 to 7x their revenue and growth in the time that he was involved. It's really remarkable when you can see somebody who understands strategy, but also application of that strategy. And so as the founder and CEO of 40 Strategy, we're here today to unpack the stories in life. And Carl, dude, I'm excited to have you here today.
I'm fired up. Let's get it done. Let's have a good time today.
Dude, all right. So only question that I ask everybody. Who are you in your words?
Great question. Wow, you just go.
Right in,
just
bro.
Let's go. Who am I? My heart at the end of the day, and what I'm about is making a difference. And I know it's cliche, but let me go deeper than that. Growing up, I had nothing, very little, and then I had the opportunity to have something decent. Get into what you may experiencing if you may middle class. And my first part of my life was I married my high school sweetheart, and it was all about just providing for my 4 kids. So that was for like 10, 15 years. My sole purpose was putting enough money in the bank account, right? But today it's a whole different level. And it was interesting. I remember reading a book, Business Brilliant, by Louis Schiff. And he blew my mind of these beliefs that the middle class has. And I remember reading it going, oh no. I believe in that. And it's stopped me from making a greater difference in the world. So today, my whole passion right now is about positively impacting 1 million people, 10,000 organizations. And I want to give at least $1 million to charity. We're well on our way of doing that. And I hope to get way more than that. So it's about, at the end of the day, making a difference in purpose, but a legitimate one, right? So it's the best. Just recently, I had somebody write me a note, and they said, it was a long note, and they said, Carl, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have my business. I had somebody else the other day, I was on the call, and she started tearing up, and she's like, Carl, you're the first person who said that to me. So what's exciting for me is that real, authentic giving and making a difference for these entrepreneurs and business leaders, because they're trying to do the right thing too, right? They're trying to make a real difference. And what's been really fun for me is that it's happening. And so I know that's a long-winded answer, but there's stuff to it, right? That's deeper and I care about. And, at its core, it's interesting. You want to look back. What really also hit me there's 2 different events in my life. I remember meeting he was the VP of sales for one of the companies that went 3.5 times in 5 years, our size. So significant growth. And, VP of sales ended up getting melanoma cancer, Larry Stark. And I remember being with him multiple times. He was a mentor to me, and he did an amazing job. But he did pass away while we were working together. And first kind of like middle-aged person, that had died that I knew really well in work. So we get ready to go to the funeral, right, and to the ceremony that they had. And I expected them to all talk about his work, right? I expected this, he did this and this, and he grew this company from X to Y million, and these are all the other things he's done in his career. And not one person talked one thing about any business thing that he had done. Nobody cared. But in every single company, somebody had showed up. Because what difference Larry made to them as a person.
Yep.
So that was a big aha moment. This big, I'm searching to climb up the corporate ladder, have these wonderful experiences, but doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So then I had a second experience. This was at church, and actually it was a guest. I think this particular one was a guest. And he said, there's somebody that passed away a while back that everybody knew their name, knew this person's name. And when he died, and I was getting ready to speak at this, the session, and the two boys came up, the two sons, and they said to the pastor, "Don't you dare say that he was a good husband. Don't you dare say that he was a good father. Don't you dare say he was even a good CEO." And they went through all the reasons why.
Wow.
And so those two events,
Contrast, man.
Right. Of here's what should or shouldn't. And so to me, a lot of what I'm trying to do today is keeping the end in mind, right? Of can I do things that will inspire, transform, change people's lives, give them hope when they didn't have hope, give them tools when they didn't have tools, and help give them the confidence to take the next step. And when I get those notes, and when I get somebody crying, I know it's happening, right? And so that's it at its core. And then looking back, I got 4 kids. I am hopeful when my day passes that my wife will be there, my high school sweetheart, my 4 kids will be there, their respective families, the friends that I have, they will show up, not because they feel obligated, but because hopefully they felt the love, over the time that I've been able to give and share. And so that to me is what matters.
Yeah.
That's the deep stuff, what really, really matters about things. There's so much stuff that just doesn't matter.
That's true.
And I get caught up in it. Just to let you know, I don't, when I'm saying these things, folks.
We all do. We all do.
Holy cow. It's like, can that car just move a little bit faster? It doesn't matter, right? There's so many things that don't matter. And we get caught up in it. I am guilty as charged, for those type of things. Yeah. But when we can get through that and focus on stuff that really, really matters, that's what gets me out of bed each day. All those things I talked about, that's what really matters. And I'm excited today because I'm so grateful for this. I feel I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Nothing else.
Yeah.
People could offer me, it's happened, ridiculous sums of money to change and do different things. I have zero interest.
Yeah.
Because it's not my purpose. And so that is for me, such a sense of comfort. And because I'm in it, I'm committed.
Yeah.
Going to do this for the long haul. I got a 10-year vision, but I'm planning to go way beyond that. It's funny, people talk about retirement. I kind of laugh. I'm like, first of all, you and I know this. A lot of people don't ever have to make money again.
Yep.
And I remember one of my favorite stories. I was talking with a gentleman. PE was trying to recruit him to become an operator for a company. And we were talking with him, interviewing him. And he's like, "Carl, and he always bragging. He wasn't bragging a little too much. He's like, I got a house here, da, 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 da. And I can do this, and I have this, and I have these cars, da, 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 da. And it was a little bit obnoxious. But then he stopped and he said, "Carl, if I see another pool, a luxury pool at a place again, I'm going to drown myself in it because he was missing something.
Yep.
Right. He was missing his purpose.
That's right.
And so that's why, why I have my podcast, being part of that is that, part of the reason I have that is because I want people to be as successful as they absolutely can, but I want them also to have their eyes open to the next summit.
Yeah.
Because when you lose purpose, it's dangerous between that, after you won a marathon, after you sold your business, after you like want to just let go, and a lot of people get depressed right after those events. Like astronauts, they validated, right, that the only thing that they can get them over to getting super depressed is give them a ton of goals.
Yep.
And so that's when we talk about people who are getting ready to pass, like, you got to start working on who you want to be next. Because we get wrapped up in being a CEO. I'm this, I'm a teacher, I'm this, but it's like, you're more than that.
Yep. I love how you answered the tell us who you are in your words question, and all the directions you took in it and all the embedded lessons. Listening to the very last part of that, it's funny because I always, just for those of you that are watching and see this or have watched me interview, yes, when I have an in-person interview, I like to have a couple of notes in front of me, but I don't have preset questions. And what I find myself always having to do in the essence of presence is actively listening to every piece of it without attaching to wanting to ask a question about any of it until it's done. And so as I am sitting here saying this out loud, it's interesting because a few things sparked for me towards the end. One of my favorite quotes that I've said for a long time that just instantly shifted in my entire belief around it when you were talking came from a guy, I think Aeneas Williams might be the originator of the quote, but that's who I heard it from. And his whole belief was, begin with the end in mind and die empty. And as I'm sitting listening to you, I think what's really fascinating, and I'm just owning this real time in my own thought process, is the resonance disappeared for me when I was listening to you talk because of the die empty. I actually believe that we need to begin with the end in mind and ideally die full. Right. And just to even what you talked about, right? Whether it's an astronaut that just returns back, it's somebody who wins their first Super Bowl. It's the person who finally gets their first cash exit in a big business. It's the first financial year that's whatever the case may be, fitness training and physique competition that you get awarded. It doesn't matter what it is, right? There often for most people is a residual, what I call valley of despair on the other side. Because they've put so much into something that they actually haven't been able to renew and refill, and they literally are empty, right? So combination of fatigue, being tired, right? Having left everything where it is and no ability to have it be refilled to be full means, yeah, we've hit this pinnacle, but we've got nothing else to go anywhere else, right? And so thank you for the way you described that, because you just shifted that for me, because I do believe now it's begin with the end in mind and die full, which is my goal. There's a lot embedded in what you talked about as well. And I want to hit on a couple of things that really stuck out first. What were the middle class beliefs that you had that resonated deep when you read that book? How did they show up in your life? And how did you start to redirect or reframe those beliefs into whatever they are now?
This first one I'm going to say is going to feel a little contradictory, but you're good enough. Okay. Now, this is what I want to explain. It's contradictory.
I think I know where you're going, but go with it because I want to hear.
Because there's a pull within those who are middle class of don't go up there.
Yes.
Don't go up there. Stay with me.
Yes.
Stay with me. Right. This is how we're connected. This is who we are. And so that's why you're good enough. Hey, Brian, you're good enough. You've got a show. You've done this. You got this going. You're good enough. Why do you have to do this more? Right.
Yeah.
The one thing people have been asking me this thing recently when I've been on other shows, and it's what would you do differently when you're younger? I'd think bigger. our potential, you know this, our potential is so extraordinary.
Dude, huge.
And when we say we're good enough, and by the way, we have to have comfort of our soul where we're at, right? So that's why I'm saying we have to be careful of this.
Yeah.
Because you have to have joy through the process. Otherwise, you're also empty.
True.
Right? But if you don't recognize that we have the potential to do such extraordinary things, you won't.
That's right.
And that's, to me, is one of those really key, stay with me.
Yeah.
Right? Don't go outside of that.
Yep.
You know, let's be comfortable in our own words. And so that, to me, was one of the biggest ones.
I'm really happy that you started out with saying that it feels contradictory, because I think that for many people receiving that, they're going to hear it through, oh, wait, you're saying that I'm not good enough? What's interesting is shame has two talk tracks. It's I'm not worthy and I'm not good enough.
That's right. That's right.
And it's who do you think you are?
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
And this is where I lived. And that was the one that I had to break, because everything major I ever did, I felt the need to apologize for. I wanted to pull back the throttle in my life. Why? And it wasn't even stated explicitly, but it literally was that whole dynamic of like, oh man. And I think that there's a really profound shift as well, because I think that, you know, that was one of the things too in my early years with my wife. She'd always be like, when is enough enough? Right? Well, at the time, I didn't have enough internal strength to really understand, like, actually, I have enough now. Right? But what's interesting is, like, I said this on my show with Meltzer just this morning. I'm as self-actualized as I can be in this moment. So in theory, if I'm present in this moment, then everything that has happened in my life up until now has contributed to be enough for right now. But I'm probably going to live at least another day, probably another week, probably another year, probably another decade, unless something unforeseen happens. And so whatever I have today also can't be enough for the future world. And I don't mean that negatively to people. It's just that there's no final destination. Only constant evolution of self. And so I love that you called that one in specific to attention. So how did that narrative impact you specifically? And how did you start to be able to work through it to evolve to where I believe your belief is today?
Yeah. So I did. I was very comfortable. I was in the middle of a company, which was the favorite company I ever worked for prior to this. And that was the company I mentioned that Larry Stark was a part of.
Yeah.
Okay. And Lightspeed loved it. We had, if you read the book Good to Great, we lived that. We lived the principles of it. We had great core values. We had the BHAG. We walked our talk. You know, we did so many things right, but we were good enough. And so I found during this season that I was starting to get bored.
Yeah.
Okay. And whenever I get bored, it's funny. This is going to be a funny thing I'm about to say. I'm not a lottery guy. Like I came from numbers. It doesn't make any sense for you to buy the lottery, but I also recognize you can't win unless you don't buy a lottery ticket.
True. Yep.
Okay. But there would always be these seasons that all of a sudden I'd be like, for some reason, I want to go and get a lottery ticket. Like what I'm talking like $1 one, or that now it's $2 or whatever it is, right? You know, $3 from that, whatever, multiplier. But like I'm talking about maybe in total $5. But why I was doing that is I recognized something internally is I was trying to get out of something. It was this really weird thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm not happy. I'm trying to get out of something. This is a subliminal sign that I'm trying to get out. And so moving ahead of to me, once again, is this, I had at this particular place, I had peaked. My opportunity to learn and grow more. I had this wonderful life. I did. And I still do. But I was coaching. Not only was I able to be an executive in a company that was growing significantly and having just an amazing company. And we were doing it in a great world in K-12 education. Like we were making a difference for children and students, you know, for children and for the teachers. And it was awesome. So that was rewarding. But I wasn't learning anymore. And I wasn't growing. And you're good enough was telling me to hold back what was happening was I was wanting to go to get more lottery tickets. Okay. Because I wasn't happy. And the good enough side was trying to tell me Oh, just stay there, Carl. Don't leave.
Yeah.
You've been here almost a decade. You've earned, you've got this ESOP, you got these shares, you've grown these things. Why would you want to leave this now? I knew in my soul, though, it wasn't right. And it was so interesting. I did end up getting recruited away and went with another company, and that was a whole nother amazing experience. And that was a big part. I would have never taken that phone call if I didn't read Business Brilliant. But I did. I read it, and I remember going to the interview. And by the way, they're recruiting a ton of people from around the area. I was just one of many, maybe 9 to 10 candidates. I came out of that interview and I bawled like a baby. Wow. Because I knew I had it. I knew it was mine.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to have to leave everything that I felt was good. But I was getting empty. Mm-hmm. And so I made the decision to join, what's the opportunity. And by the way, it didn't happen right away. Yeah. Like it was a process, but it was the right thing because I wasn't giving my potential enough. Yeah. I wasn't creating opportunity. I was limiting our family's opportunities. Yeah. I was limiting my learning. I was limiting to grow and do different parts. And so it was one of the hardest business decisions I ever made. But I wouldn't be here today if I didn't make that decision. It was funny. There was 2 opportunities in between that happened, and I would have never ended up being here if I wasn't willing to jump and take that risk when everything was comfortable.
That comfort that you describe, I've called the seduction of success for a long time. Right. And I fell into it as well. Mm-hmm. And I think what's really fascinating is when boredom creeps in, it's one of 2 things. When either boredom creeps in or some level of toxic resistance leans in, those are both real clear signs to make a change.
Yeah, you nailed it, right? I mean, whether for it's going to be so many different things. It could be video games, which is one of the better ones, right? It could be alcohol. It could be drugs. It could be running. Running all of a sudden becomes your drug, right? We're escaping what we could or should be doing.
Yep. Now, what I will say is I'm adamantly against the word should because I think should is a shame-based word. So could or would be doing. How about that? Fair enough. So take that for what it is. But I just every time I hear the word should, I'm like, man, I just want that gone from our English language because it just immediately puts the shame and blame energy into the environment. Exactly. I identify with the experience of having my bank account full but being empty inside. And it was a big part of what I had to go through to really be able to start to get to the place that I am today, which is so much more free and actually full, right? I've said in a few different ways that I used to be able to be in a room full of people, surrounded by people, but could still feel completely alone. And now I can be completely alone and never be lonely, right? Which is a complete different flip. And so I'd be curious to understand, how did this emptiness actually show up in your life, right? Outside of business. And what ripple effect, if any, did it have on relationships or health? And where did that put you?
And this is once again what I was holding back, right? And those type of things. Yeah, it would. I would get into traps of once again of just getting bored, right?
So give me a specific example.
Let's see. I'm trying to find a good one. There was times where I would just be, not as fun, not as happy, angrier at home, not as good of a dad.
Yep.
And that, it seemed like subtle. Oh, that's not that big of a deal. Oh, it is. When you're all of a sudden coming home cranky every day. Yeah. Right. From work, that's not good. And then you don't, once again, and you're not willing, once again, for me at that point in time, I wasn't willing to try new things. I was happy. Yeah. Happy. Right. So once again, I know I didn't give you something rich and amazing and deep and exciting. I get that. But it's funny. There's been times of this, like I'm a big video game, but I'm like, oh, why am I staying up to 2 a.m.? And that's because I'm trying to hide for something. I'm trying to fill my mind and create it with a void in between. And by the way, it'd be, of course, a strategy board game, of course. So I'd geek out in that because I do strategy. I love it, you know? Yeah. But how dumb, right? How dumb that was. And it's funny. I'll find myself in the trap when I'm afraid to do things. Yeah. You know, like even recently, you know, it's like, oh, why am I going down this path again? It's like, oh, I don't want to go out and sell. Yeah. You know, that was like a thing because I'm not a sales guy by trade, right? And we've been fortunate. You know, all of our business has come from referral.
That's amazing.
Okay, and so what a wonderful thing, right? Yeah. You know, when you don't really have to sell and you're just getting referrals, you can get lazy with that, though. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got this goal to impact 10,000 companies. Yep. I can't do that if I'm not selling.
Right. Yeah.
And it was weird. So it was like,
and you can't sell effectively if you're just good enough anyway, right?
Well, it's funny. It's like, and then I got to go back to it. It is selling, but it's not selling. I can't extend and reach my mission if I'm holding back. Mm-hmm. I can't do it. And so I literally the other day, background finance, I put together a spreadsheet, our 10K plan. It's like, this is how, and we literally, it's so exciting. In the past 4 or 5 months, we've had like all these things over the past 5 years, and I can argue past 30 years of like all come together. It's like, oh, we found it. Cool. You know, we found it all put together where we can now figure out things to scale ourselves to our next level. And so once again, it creates this opportunity of getting uncomfortable to do things but you know, it's interesting. It's not uncomfortable when you're sharing the good news. Right. You know, and that's, I think, the difference of where I think I was struggling with before we had the idea. And now that we have the idea, now I know how to scale it. So I'm not afraid to share the good news. I was actually afraid because I actually was seeing, because I hadn't figured out how to scale it. I was like, I was naturally holding myself back because I'm like, oh crap, this is not going to work. Yep.
Well, it goes back to even what we said, or you said very early in the call, which is when you've got lack of clarity, especially around your purpose, right? It leads to a whole bunch of confusion. And, you know, when you're in a position where you can't have clarity, I'm also a big believer, and you've heard me say this before, that the second you protect yourself, you actually guarantee you're going to disconnect yourself. Whether that's in your goals, the way that you live, energetically how you show up, the armor, the interactions, it doesn't really matter. And so oftentimes what happens is when there is a lack of clarity, there's an inherent level of protection that exists within us. But most people don't sit in the discomfort long enough to identify what it is and actually remove it. And so that's what makes you and so many other high performers ones that break the paradigm, because for you, stagnation means death, for lack of a better term, right? Because if you're not growing, you're going backwards. Just because the speed at how our world moves today, our nervous systems are not designed to keep up with it. We've got to update our operating systems like we do.
And it's, you know this, right? We haven't changed.
No.
You know, us as humans, we are pathetic.
No, we're meat suits. Like, it's very, very basic. We all are.
It's like, once again, because I do like to study history. I like to study religion. I love to study different, and it's like our human nature hasn't changed one iota.
Not at all.
Since the earliest of days that we have written communication, right? It's no different. And here we have, what is happening with AI and generative AI and ChatGPT and our ability to change. And there used to be Moore's Law, right? Which is every 18 months, basically, technology would double. Yeah. Now it's every 3 months.
It's every 3. Right. It's crazy how exponential it is right now.
Yeah, we can't handle it. It's so beyond. And what's happening, though, to my fear, and looking directly at the camera here, to all our small to medium-sized business owners, you are going to go out of business if you don't adapt now.
Yep.
It's like it's just begun.
It's just begun.
Yeah.
And I've become friends with what I would consider one of the world-renowned AI experts. He's consulted with the Pentagon and many others on just the concept. And he works with huge Fortune 100 companies, but also works with the smaller to middle-sized companies that really need the resources. And I hope I'm not misquoting this, but he essentially said that if there is not some adaptation or integration of AI, which can mean 50,000 things right now.
Yes. Yeah.
But really leaning into this trend in the next 12 to 18 months, you won't be able to catch up.
That's right. Yeah.
Like it will be mathematically impossible for you to be able to catch up from a skill set, from a knowledge, from a resources standpoint. And so, it's interesting because the world, to our whole point, is changing now exponentially, right? And a lot of the things that have caused your and my moments of pause weren't necessarily directly related to technology, but it makes all of how we exist more complicated.
It does, but it's if you're willing to embrace, it can make it so much easier.
Yeah.
I mean, we're able to today put out 10 to 20x with the same amount of effort because we're using ChatGPT and other generative AI tools, and it's amazing. Like the one thing, literally on the call here, our director of operations was talking with Tanya Smith, and she got a PhD in leadership, and she knows her stuff.
Yeah.
And I said, Tanya, we can now get out so much more with so less effort and so much less cost. But I don't want to stop being human. And I want to make sure that even though we are making our content and trying to maximize SEO and do all the things you're supposed to do, I want them to still be attracted to, if you may, what I'm bringing.
Bingo.
And what 40 Strategy is trying to bring and towards that. And so that's the challenge, I think, for everyone who's getting into this. It's easy to, honestly, to press a button and next thing you know, you've got a 20-page report. What's hard is to incorporate your soul.
It's 100%.
Right, in this process. And just where I find some of the greatest value is it just helps you get unstuck so much faster now.
Yeah.
You get stuck in an idea and it's just like, just ask it. And not to copy it, not to cut and paste, but to get in more. I find myself writing more now.
Yep.
This is the irony. You're like, Carl, I thought you just said it saved you time. It does save me time. Like if I would have had to do what I did in the past, but my editing now is so much more. My writing is so much more. Because why? In the past, it was like you would strain because you get stuck.
Yep.
And now I could walk around the block, dictate towards Google Doc, right? I'll dictate towards it a idea. Then we put into our ChatGPT prompt to massage it. And then I'm editing what is my words.
Yep.
Right? But so much faster. Because literally before I was talking about having conflict at home.
Yeah.
I was loving it. Every Saturday morning, I have my Strategy for Saturday blog. And I was showing up every Saturday morning, like 7 a.m., and writing my blog. And I loved it. It was like the best creative time in the world. I'd get my latte, my caramel latte. And I enjoyed it. My wife was like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving me every Saturday morning? Well, like, you're not really awake anyways. It's like, and you're like, stop leaving me every Saturday morning.
I want you in bed next to me. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, be here.
Yeah.
Stop acting like you're efficient and doing this. And then I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. And it took me a little while to uncover my fun habit.
Yeah.
It was like my little crack habit. I enjoyed this creative time, and it was fun. It was actually a really cool part. But now we're using tools. Once again, I've cut that down by like 70%. My effort.
Yeah.
And we're doing way more than we used to.
Yeah.
In a good way, right? In a good way.
I would tell you, though, it's similar to some of the other things we've talked about, whether it be alcohol or weed or video games or sex or drugs or whatever you want to call it. I also would tell you that this is one of those areas where it can be used as a crutch instead of as a creative tool. And I think that's where there's going to be a lot of confusion in the marketplace. And I think a lot more confusion, particularly for the end of the line buyer, regardless of whether it's B2C or B2B. The reality of it is like, a year ago, you could tell who had original thought, who could communicate certain things clearly, who had access to language that could make you feel and think differently, right? And now, anybody that wants to write seemingly can write. And so I agree with you.
Kind of.
I know.
Because we could tell as humans.
I think we can, but I think there's still enough confusion that's still out there because to your point, not everybody understands how to take it as a tool and mold it and modify it into your own level of language so that the people that you interact with can access it.
That's right.
Right. And that's where I think AI will be dangerous, but it's no different than anything else in this world. Anything that's used to the level of a crutch, right, will cut you off from something. And that's just a pragmatic reality of it.
Oh yeah.
I want to jump back because you also talked about this window of time that you were really what, I took from my friend Anthony Trucks called the season of dad.
Mm-hmm.
He said to me one time early when we were speaking together, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, he said, man, I'm in the season of dad. And I was like, I just liked how that sounded. It hit me. And I've stolen it. I tell people that now too, because I have a 9 and a 10-year-old. I'm in the season of dad right now.
Yep.
I am in my time where I'm not going to get this period of time back. My kids are at home. They're active. They're engaged. And so all of my decisions ultimately frame around that.
Yep.
Now, they didn't always.
That's right.
I'd like to understand for you, because I know you are a father of 4. You've been married for 25 years, which congratulations, by the way. That's badass. And that's hard to get to for a lot of people. What did your season of dad look like? How did it change the way you showed up in the world from a business perspective?
Yeah.
Just give us a little feel for your family trajectory.
Oh man, I'm so grateful that first of all, I remember. Sorry, I'm going way back. I'm so grateful that I made some decisions to stick with my high school sweetheart, and I mean that like in the, so many people. Why would you want to have a girlfriend in college? That's never going to work.
Yeah.
Look, folks, when you find the right person, don't screw around.
Yeah. Don't mess it up.
Don't screw around. So we used to say to each other, our deal was you can't cheat, period. Like you might screw up a million other things.
Yep.
Don't cross that line.
Yep.
So
I completely agree with that. That's something my wife and I've always said too. Yeah.
Don't cross that line. So that was big. And then we had faith and belief. It was funny. We're going to have 4 kids. And so there's a whole story around that and stuff. And I don't know if we'll get there or not today. But what's fun was what I didn't tell you. One part of my stories is I thought I was supposed to be a high school teacher and coach football. Okay. And I was supposed to teach history. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. And matter of fact, before I got to Lightspeed, the company I was mentioning that had one of the most transformational times, I'd built up a tax practice on the side for the sole purpose of supplementing my teacher's income so I could help still provide my kids.
Interesting.
Okay. I actually was growing up, had about 35 clients. It was actually making real income. And I was like, wow, this is going to work. And the company, Lightspeed once again, they came to me and said, Carl, we like what you're doing. We appreciate your honesty that you're going to leave us in 5 years, because I told them I figured it's going to take 5 years to build enough supplemental income to leave. Yeah. And along the way, I was planning to get my master's and do the whole teaching thing and get ready to go. And so I'd just go. And they're like, but we're not going to invest in you if you do that. And I was like, what does that mean? So here I really felt called. I was supposed to become a teacher, coach high school football. And why, by the way, did I do that? It's because football saved me when I was in 8th grade and I was getting I was getting in trouble and I was starting drinking. And at 8th grade I was getting into trouble, and football saved me. So I've always had this give back towards the game of football because it got me out of trouble. And we just happened to be a program. We were really fortunate. We had a great high school program, great high school coach. My next door neighbor ended up, they won the state championship when he played, and he played at University of Washington, won the national championship, played in the National Football League. So I had these people, despite my messed up, wrecked up life I grew up with, I had these people I was able to see and do amazing things. So got through, thought I was going to teach and coach. And then they said no. And so I said yes to them. And I thought I had broken my word when I said yes to the company. Okay. But this is what was cool. They gave me so many amazing opportunities. I'm going to skip that for a moment. Maybe we'll get back to it. But let me get to the family side. Okay. I wanted to teach and coach. I ended up coaching 25 seasons of youth sports.
That's unbelievable.
What's interesting is I was heading down a path to only coach varsity. I would have never saw my kids except for my two boys when they went through the varsity program.
When they were on your team,
yes,
playing during season.
But I would have not seen their entire youth period. Yeah. And then when they were playing underneath Friday Night Lights, I wouldn't have been able to really be a dad.
Right.
I would have been their coach.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was the best. I mean, I would, I had about a 35, 40-minute commute to work. And I remember I just built my day around being a dad and being a coach for my kids.
Yeah.
And I'd go work and grind. I'd come home. I'd be changing in the car, like literally at stop signs, putting on my gear from whatever it was, 2 or 3 hours. I'd help coach and then come home, be with the family. And if I needed to, I'd work again before I went to bed. Mm-hmm. And that was such a sweet period of time. I mean, it was to be able to be with all my kids. I was able to. My youngest is the only one I didn't coach. And of course, she's the one that's kind of. Well, they all, actually three of the four ended up playing college sports or going to play college sports, and so it was the best. And the thing, literally, we have our last kid getting ready to graduate from high school, and we're gonna miss it. We know it in a good way. But by the way, our goal was to make sure that our children became competent adults so they can provide for themselves.
Yeah.
So we haven't always been nice.
Yeah.
Right? Because we wanted them to be resilient, independent, disciplined, learn how to deal with adversity.
Yep.
And so, yeah, being a dad is the best. And I chose multiple times for my career to give up millions of dollars to be present.
I love that.
So the reason why 40 Strategy exists was because when I was with Cascade Strategy, which was a strategic planning software company based out of Australia, I opened up the US office. We had great growth in 3 years. Started consulting, helping people out because people were buying our software like a Peloton bike, which meant that it became a very expensive towel rack, right? And so I wanted to keep our clients, and so I started giving free consulting instead, and then started charging for consulting. Yeah. It went so well. CEO Australia, we were in a sea kayak in Australia, in the Sydney Harbor, right? What the kayaking? He's like, Carl, the seductive. Carl, do you want to now open up my global consulting business? Seductive, right? Seductive. But I knew what it meant. I asked some questions, asked some details, but to do that right, I was going to have to be gone 80% of the time. Yeah. I wasn't going to be able to be present and see as many of my kids. Like I've probably seen, and we have 4 kids who've all been in sports at their highest respective levels that they could be. Yeah. And I'd probably have been at 95% of them.
That's amazing.
To be present. And that was also awesome, And I had this seductive opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I said, no. I don't want to miss what I'll never get back again. Yeah. There's no amount of money that's worth missing that.
Did you say no that day, or did you sleep on it?
No, it was not on media. It took a while. Once again, it was seductive, right? Yeah. Oh, you could be the global, create this global consulting company and do strategic plan what you love and travel the world what you love. Doesn't that sound amazing?
Where'd your wife stand on it all?
She knew it wasn't the right thing, but she did not want me to start this company up.
Got it.
Oh, hell no.
Interesting.
My wife and I got in the worst fight we had almost ever had
about 40 Strategy.
On starting 40 Strategy.
Wow.
She said, I'm done being an entrepreneur's wife.
Oh, okay.
I want consistent income. I want to get back to that old money you were making back in the past. That was consistent. And you get the bonuses and it's clean and clear. We had a knockdown, drag out fight. I mean, not, just words, all words, but it was the first time in our entire, it's whatever it's been. It's like 28, getting up to 28 years here in June. She's like, What are you gonna choose? She was saying, are you going to choose me or are you going to choose this another entrepreneurial journey? And to me, it wasn't an or, it was an and.
Yeah.
But to her, it was an or.
So this, I would tell you, is probably deeply resonant for many entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. I know many whose partners have not been in full support or who have been adamantly against it. Absolutely. Or who reach a point like yours, which is like, I don't want the entrepreneur life anymore. Yeah. Right? And for those of us that enjoy that ride, right, it can not always be as enjoyable for our partners, right? When money's up or money's down or the lack of consistency. So I would really like to slow down. And if you're willing, I'd love to unpack the conversations that you guys had. And you don't have to give all the detail, but what were the predominant points on both sides? And how did the two of you communicate to bring some level of reconciliation? Because you're not divorced today. No. So although she asked you to choose in a moment, clearly there's been growth. So help us understand that.
So, once again, there was a big part of this piece for her was comfort and stability. Yep. And she remembered these big paychecks from the time before. And nothing's more comforting to a spouse than a steady paycheck, especially when she was, for the most part, working from home. She works part-time as a nurse, but this is our core. Yeah. This is how we provide. This is how we do things. And so that was issue number one. Issue number two was, interestingly enough, it was the college thing. Okay. So before I even head down that path, I confirmed with our financial advisor, we got this, right? He's like, yeah, you got this. We got this, right? So that was a big piece. Like, can we pull this off? Like, I wasn't going into this broke. Yeah. But the concern was,
could it sacrifice everything else?
Correct. Yep, totally. Right. So that was a big piece. The third was just the energy and effort. Yeah. Being an entrepreneur is not easy, and it takes its own toll. Yeah. Whenever you have to create and provide and create business to pay your mortgage or whatever you have, it's scary. And so that was another key point. Fourth was this disbelief whether I could do it. Yeah. And even though I've had all these successes through my career, I was like, can you do this again?
There's still ambiguity. Yeah.
Can you do this again? And so she had show me state from Missouri from day one, when we finally went past that. But where I did ultimately at the end of the day, I was like, I believe like no other time that this is what I'm called to be doing. Yeah. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I was really fortunate. So once again, that go away, it was like August of 1999 when I had the Sea Kayak event, in Sydney, Australia. And it was around September-ish, I guess. I think when I said, it's not going to work. Okay. And then when I told my wife, I'm not going to work for somebody else. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was pissing off my old boss and I was pissing off the most important boss, right? At the same time, right? And that's not good, right? The person who's paying you and the person that makes you happy, right? That was going away. Yeah. And so, but it'll enable transition. Yeah. It wasn't an overnight jump. It was a calculated risk. And I so I knew what she didn't know is I was going around the country and going around the world. I got to care for the world. It was more the U.S. and the Caribbean islands. She didn't know the responses I was getting from clients. I was down at Cal State Fullerton, and they were like, did a presentation in front of 250 people, and feedback that got back is it was the best facilitation in 25 years.
Interesting.
Like, all right, son's working right here. Yeah. Right. I had another matter of fact, right down here in Phoenix, I had a company pull me aside and he said, Carl, what you told me in the last 2 hours, I would have paid you 10 grand for. Just in the last 2 hours. And I was like, I did the math. I was like, you barely paid that for our software, buddy. Yeah. So I knew I could create value, but she wasn't seeing that because I wasn't being paid that way, right? So that, and what happened, what was really cool, because I stuck to the convictions, and what it did come down to this, trust me. It came down to this, trust me. And hers was this, trust me, but show me state thing. So it was this, she gave me a conditional approval.
Yeah.
And so what was so cool that by March of 2020, now everyone's going to remember that date here in a moment. By March of 2020, I had as grossed as much revenue that I had in my highest paid job I ever had in my life.
Wow.
I'm not talking about
I got you.
selling a business, that type of stuff, but
you.
I'm just talking from monthly income.
Yep.
In 3 months in, I was making more gross revenue than any other time I had in my life.
Amazing.
Good proof point, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a little thing called COVID happened.
Yeah. Yeah. We all felt that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I was traveling around, my clients were all over the place. And that was scary, right? So all of a sudden, there wasn't strategy. There was like, oh, throw in your expletive, right?
Yeah.
Am I going to survive?
Yeah.
Everybody. Not just like survive your business, but survive personally and family and all that stuff was going on. There was so much confusion. So I didn't mention, so we give the first 10% of our net revenues to profit, which basically means the first 10%. I mean, the only time it's net revenue is when I pay a contractor to do work.
Yep.
So that's about, but other than that, it's like, it's more or less gross revenue.
Yeah.
And,
Which, by the way, is not insignificant. And I was going to ask you about that. And I'm happy you brought it up. I want to pause for just a second, because literally when you say what you just did, it's nearly gross with the exception of a handful of contractors. It's completely different than doing 10% of actual net profit. It's worlds different. And I really want to honor you for that, because that's significant. That is unique. That is so rare in the world. It's deeply aligned with Ashley and my philosophy. And that's also something that we're structuring within our own world, because it's that important to us. So I just wanted to say thank you on that, but to make sure that we didn't brush over that in case we don't come back to it.
Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is by June. Yeah, that's right. I'd given, let's see here, as in May, I think. End of May. So yeah, early June, I had paid more out in charity than I had made in revenue, which means that my revenue dropped 90%, over 90%.
Totally.
Okay. Scary, right? Wife's going to kill it. It's done. You know, I get a bit of faith. And I remember I got down on my knees, Brian, and I was like, all right, hey, Lord, if this is going to happen, let me know. What I didn't tell you is I had done this webinar with Mark Pfister. He's based out of New York. He's got a board expert. And we had done this webinar. This is right before all this happened. Like, it's all happening simultaneously. I did this webinar on a Thursday or Friday. No, like on a Wednesday. Okay. And I sent out a bunch of emails on Friday, like 35 emails, like the participants. I show up on Monday. Not one person had responded to that email. And I got down and I was like, and I want to be careful. Like once again, I do a lot of things of belief and faith, no question. But I don't typically get down on my knees and like, all right, I'm going to surrender. I'm going to surrender. And at that moment, it just went from there. Because I had the faith to give when I shouldn't have given. See, most people would have never given that 10% when it was more than my whole monthly income.
When you normally wouldn't have given if the numbers were different. You said shouldn't again.
Oh, sorry.
No, bro, this is held in love, right? Because this is just a small little pivot and nuance in the language that we use. But you're right. Most people would not have even considered giving because you weren't in a position where by most pragmatic standards you could give.
That's right.
And so that is phenomenal, by the way, and difficult. Why do I say that I really want to call attention to that? And this is not about me, but I want to give a correlation. There were many years throughout our growth and trajectory that we donated more than we saved or invested for ourselves. We're proud of that. We have a belief in giving until it hurts, which means we give even when we don't have to give. And I believe that that is the most authentic form of giving, when it's not contingent upon your own financial stability, which is what many people say. Oh, when I make this amount, then I'll give. And it's like, no, but what about the compound effect of the 20 years of giving in smaller amounts while you're acquiring wealth, right? So I wanted to pause, because what you're talking about is significantly different than what most would have
That's right.
even considered doing.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it was super powerful. And it literally to this day, I look back at that point, and that was the most important decision that we had in this company, and the decision that we've been able to make. Like if I would have quit right then, all the stuff that we've been able to do since that point in time would have never have happened. Yep. But it just went from, as I said, we started as a rocket ship, just like collapse, but then
the moment of surrender,
just, double and double and double years after. And
how did it feel to have your wife not completely buy in and support you right out of the gate?
It sucked. It sucked. It was hard. I mean, right? When the person you sleep next to in your bed.
I mean, you've been married 20, 25 years almost at this point.
That's right.
Right? Like that's not an insignificant. I mean, a majority of your life, or at least half.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. High school sweetheart, so more than half.
Oh, yeah. That's definitely more. No, it was tense, to say the least, and so I probably communicated a little bit more than normal in the successes, right? Yeah. During that period of time, hey, this is going well, this is going well, this is going well. Hey, look, I got money in the bank account, in this new checking account I opened up, business bank checking account. So I was trying to regularly and consistently more than I typically would. But even to this day, it's interesting with the business. She doesn't like everything I do with it. She's a much more of a way better heart than I have. I mean, she just is one of those givers. She's a nurse, right? She actually, let me clarify, she's a palliative nurse, meaning a hospice nurse. Geez. Okay. Yeah. All right. So
it's a whole different level.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So I'm pathetic, honestly, compared to her in terms of and what she has done for our kids and what she does for others on a consistent basis. Like, she has such a gift. I mean, in these things. And so I'm so grateful for that. But there's certain things in 40 strategy that I know I need to do. And so we still have these hard things from time to time. Yeah. And I listen. But sometimes she thinks I don't listen because I don't do what she said. That's been a conflict for us at times. I said, honey, I heard you. I listened to you. But I didn't say I was going to do it. Yeah. And sometimes bridging that gap is important, right? Of recognizing and she's gotten better with dealing with that. If not, but there's even just recently we had things. I don't like the way this happened, and I'm like, there's times like I hear you, and there's other times like I understand you wouldn't do that, but I need to do it. Like I'm in this, and I can't continue to grow or develop or impact. So we still do have tough conversations about what happens, but those early days was a lot of, once again, Missouri show me state. Yeah.
Well, and I would imagine that up until that point, based on everything you've described, she was also your confidant. She was the person that you went to vent and process. Right. Now, all of a sudden, to your point, you're having to show the highlight reel instead of the whole picture for a minute, because you're trying to protect it, right? And ensure that it's going to have longevity and sustainability. And so that's not an easy place to sit in. And then to be able to navigate. And then again, you don't ever want your wife to feel invalidated. Right.
And I'm laughing at that because they do.
I know. And that's, but that's not the intent. Right. But actions can kind of come out. So just for the benefit of your wife, because on the off chance she sees this or talks about this, what is a time that you went against something that she said and you wished you would have gone with what she said?
Yeah, there's been times working with people where she had the female intuition, if you may. But I liked him, so to speak, them, he or she, right? And I made some mistakes that she picked up earlier.
Yeah.
And so there have been a couple of times, right, where she picked up in things being not congruent, going back to what you were saying. And I tend to be a trustworthy, kind of happy-go-lucky Labrador.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like my wife and I.
Yeah. And so there have been definitely some times where she called it out right early on, and I wasn't willing to agree to it. And we had a case not too long ago, meaning about a year ago, where I thought I had a done deal. And also this particular deal was going to be very lucrative, and I had to stop it out of my relationship. So I told you 40 Strides, that was a no-brainer. But this one business venture, she got so mad. Like, so mad. It was a different mad than starting a new business.
Yeah.
But this for her was integrity.
Yeah.
And I didn't fully agree with her.
Yeah.
Okay, just to clarify, I didn't fully agree with her. But I was willing to respect that for our relationship.
Yeah. I thank you for going there and for even talking about it the way that you just did. It's something that my wife and I had challenges on in many situations. And, the biggest thing for her ultimately, well, the most important thing for me was I wanted to know what she saw. Whether or not I agreed with it, I always wanted to know. Sometimes she either didn't want to completely trust herself or she didn't want to tell me. What I can say today, at least in the respect of my wife, is that she has always been right. It's dependent on the degree, right? And what I mean by the degree is the depth of what she was picking up on. The person might not have been as toxic as she thought they were, right? But she still saw what I didn't see in some respects when I was so in the moment, so looking at the opportunity, looking at the benefit, looking at, right, which is really interesting because even that level of attachment that I held in those times is probably what she was picking up on, right? I probably sensed that there was something not totally congruent there, but I was like, no, but this is going to be a lucrative opportunity, man. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to get in front of these people, right? And end up making decisions for the wrong reasons. And so that's something I had to ultimately get to a place of, is that I never react anymore when she brings something to my attention. And especially as it relates to the business, right? Or relationships in the business. She completely defaults and trusts to me in almost every situation, but I also always want her perspective because she sees what I don't. And so that was a really difficult balance for us to integrate and be able to actually trust that at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. How we go about getting there is going to sometimes look different.
Right.
But if we can't recognize that we're on the same team so that we don't have to fight about those components, right? It takes a whole bunch of the energy that doesn't serve any purpose and takes it out. And then we can focus on what do we actually need to see. And that's a really hard place to get to in life, in business, in intimate relationships. But what I have to also tell you is even in moments when you've said you don't agree, I love that you can sit here full transparency and say, yeah, I may not still have agreed to the full effect, but I made this choice because she's my partner and this is what aligned with me, even if I wasn't on board, because it shows congruence in your priorities. And at the end of the day, that is everything.
When you were talking about it, reminded me of very early in my career, you could be very lucrative being public accounting as a partner, right? So I started at Cooper's, and there were some great human beings there, and I learned a lot, and they kicked my butt in training and learning how to do things. But I noticed a lot of them didn't have their ring left in the fingers, and once again, there could have been a million reasons why it had happened, and I wasn't judging that, but I recognized that lifestyle put me at higher risk of not staying with my high school sweetheart. And so when an opportunity after I earned my CPA happened, I was like, this is probably not the right place for me. And so I can't tell you the number of times where I made these decisions like that, where, once again, maybe could have more in my account by going different, maybe could have more of this, more of that, but it wasn't worth the risk of having that be my sole number one, meaning my work at the end of the day, you know? And yeah, I mean, I spend more actual pragmatic time at working, right, in terms of hours. So let's not fool each other. Like, I don't believe in balance. This whole baloney of balance is one of the worst serpents there is.
It implies equal parts of everything versus healthy integration of it. It's completely flawed. You and I are on the same page.
So I'm not one of those people. But going back to what helped me get through a lot of those challenges, especially with 40 strategies, I started hiring coaches for the first time in my life on my own.
That's a game changer.
You know, in the past, it was through companies. So they were paying for it.
Yeah, right. It's different. It's totally different when you got skin in the game.
Yeah. And I actually, at the forefront, I hired 2 coaches, very beginning, like 2 different coaches for different reasons. And there was interesting, one of the coaches was fantastic. He's more of what I call the mental side behind it. He definitely helps out with what I call business brilliance type things. Okay, to help me overcome, once again, ideas to overcome. Correct. Yeah. But then there's other people that I call more tactical, right? You know, like, hey, here's a specific strategy you need to do. Let me help you get this done. And I remember I hired another great coach, and she really helped me get to the next, like, totally different level. And Jessica, you did a great job. You know, I mean, but so there are some people that are extraordinary out there. But I hired another coach to keep me grounded, right? Because you got to be really careful as you're starting to have success of all of a sudden thinking you're great. And so I hired him again to keep me humble, so I didn't lose my principles, my values, right? Because there's so many temptations of so many different things. And as things grow and you grow higher in whatever you're doing, funny things happen. Like, one of the funniest things that happen, and this is why, you know, when I wrote my book, and the concept that I try to help people with is, when you're on top, people don't tell you the truth as much.
So true.
And one of my big aha moments was, I used to, as a controller of a publicly traded company, I would say this one dumb joke. And I still think it's a pretty good joke. Okay. But
I'll tell you whether or not it is. Yeah,
no, I'm not even going to say the joke for purpose of the joke. No, I'm not going to do it. But I remember back then, I would say it, and like 1.5 people would laugh in a crowd of 10. And it was like, oh, I guess it wasn't a good joke, but I would laugh, ha 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 ha. And like literally, like, that's a dumb joke, Carl. When I became CEO, the entire room laughed.
Wow. Contrast again.
And I remember going, uh-oh. I had this big uh-oh moment. It's like, oh no. That middle class, we're all together, we're all in this. And once again, sometimes as a working, whatever you want to call it, right? We're in this, we're all together. Well, they weren't together. The reason why, so once again, I'm looking at the camera, the reason why people change, and this is the thing that CEOs can't get over. I'm transparent. Well, the problem is they're not going to be transparent with you because you're paying for their mortgage. Yep. They can't afford to get laid off.
Even though what the CEO really wants is truth always, human nature for 99% of people will fall into just that.
That's right.
It's the fact, which is why CEOs hire me, because I'm a truth teller and I'll help find and discover the truth, not only for them, but within their organization, because they need it to operate.
That's right.
Yeah. That's right. But you're right. You're spot on.
Yeah. And so it's one of those fascinating things that happen. It's funny. Even though my core is strategic planning, and I find myself having to coach these wisdom points. So like, how would you have a transparent business? Like, excuse me, they're not being transparent with you.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, you're not being transparent with them.
Yep.
Like, there's very few companies like that. There's a few companies out in the world like they'll post all the earnings and salaries, right? Which I just think is crazy. Okay. I mean, I kind of get it, but I kind of don't all at the same time. That's like one of those things I'm not really a big proponent of.
Yeah.
Even though I know people will tell, it's like, look, that should be your own business, unless you have a really clear, a bunch of stages which are clear and you could help. There's times I think you can, but there's a lot of businesses have so many ambiguous jobs. And so comparing one job to another is like, it just creates.
Which is what breeds resentment, disconnection, shame, all of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why generally I'm not a big fan of that. But do I think you should be transparent with your numbers? Yeah, because people are going to make up something on it anyways.
Yep.
Right? And usually it's negative.
Yep.
So I am a believer what I call some level of thoughtful transparency.
Yeah.
Might be the right thing to say. Right? Where it's important to say these things consistently and regularly. Otherwise, people make stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think all the points that you just hit on are why often CEO is like the loneliest job in the company, right? I mean, whether you're an entrepreneur or a CEO or however you position yourself, right? Like entrepreneurs and CEOs often associate with being alone, right? This element of loneliness, because we often feel like we can be on an island, or people won't understand us, or we can't communicate with everybody around us, or we don't know who to trust. These are all dynamics that are real. What would you say is your biggest problem in life or business today?
Doing the uncomfortable first. Like, it's funny, I got a new thing I know I need to do. I mentioned to you that the next thing I have to do to hit 10,000 is I got to do some uncomfortable, time-consuming things. And I don't want to do it.
What do you have to do?
Well, I know it's going to work.
What do you have to do?
I got to record personalized messages to those I can help.
So you're going to record 10,000 of them?
Maybe. Maybe. I haven't made that decision of whether it's going to be 10,000 or not. But I need to be that active and present. And I have to communicate, and it's authentic. See, there's a lot of people out there that you're going to be told to and it's not bad, but the thing is, do a common message and then send it personally to people. And so, and I won't mention the really smart 10-figure type, or 8-figure type companies that are out there, consulting agencies that do this really well, right? And it helps scale when you do it well. But I want to deeply connect with people, right? And I want them to trust in this very untrusting society that we can help make the difference for them that they can't see. And so part of it is honestly my own not wanting to do it. This is, once again, these are one of these uncomfortable things that I was like, oh man, it's kind of a grind to do this. But I know it's going to have the biggest impact. Yeah. So that's my current struggle, is like, I know exactly the path I need to do to scale. I know it. Like it's laid out. I got the script. I've got it all down. I just got to do it. Yeah. So I've been sabotaging myself, getting busy with other things. Yeah. But here we are, March 25th, April. It's happening.
So clearly there's an element of discomfort there in an untrusting world, and sending out probably cold, personalized messages in some cases, hopefully warmer since you've been such referral.
Yeah, we got techniques that we're going to do that is going to be help resonate more.
So what does that look like? I'd be curious.
Yeah, well, I don't mind saying this because I know you're not going to do it. What people are going to do, I shouldn't say that. A few people have done it, but we know who we want to work with. Okay. So we're going to directly and transparently show. I'm going to show them, I see you. I'm like doing a Loom video. I'm here. I'm on your website. And I want to work with you because I do. I authentically do. And I'm spending and who knows how that whole process will take to wrap up one, record one, to do one for each one. But I'm going to do that one by one because I care about each potential client that I can have. And I'm excited about it. And I know not all of them, of course, not all of them are gonna read that, listen to that, take the time for that. But honestly, I'll tell you why, part of the reason I decided to do this was because it's the reason why I ended up selecting my media company, my new media company I'm working with. And it was so well done. I hired them almost more for that than I did the media side. I was like, that is such an important, authentic to do today in this non-believing. I mean, they even have mannequins now, not mannequins, sorry, AI generated people that can pretend they're you.
Oh, I watched one happen real time to the point that you can read a 3-minute script to it and just type in a script and it will replicate you. They're all over the place right now.
Yeah.
But I don't want that.
Likewise, I get it.
So I am doing the things to be human and to connect, because at the end of the day, like you do, I'm working with the number one almost all cases. And so I need them to trust me from day one.
Yeah.
And because I know if they don't change their mind, it won't matter.
I mean, I think it's extremely powerful. So we teach the power of video in our mastermind and in different groups that we do. And I learned it a long time ago. I've been using video for prospecting for 15 years. Like literally 15 years ago in my archaic risk management employee benefits consulting world, I was sending YouTube and Vimeo links to people with a personalized video. And all of my partners were like, you are fucking crazy. But then we started writing the deals and we started getting attention and we started getting in places, and it's because it was personalized. It was focused. Now I also have a belief in creating a handful of what I call evergreen videos, ones that hit on or tell a very specific purpose that can be repurposed at scale, but there's a time and a place for specificity. Today, still to this date, every new follower that follows me on any platform gets a video from me. Now, it's gotten to the point now with the volume that they are not all personalized in the first one. However, all of them are going through to ultimately see who's going to respond to me.
That's right.
And if they respond, then it's personalized.
That's right.
And we've got processes within our entire system to be able to recognize where do we need to insert human, because it cannot be all automated, because not everything is created the same and not everybody's going to respond the same. But what you're about to do, I would argue, is going to be extremely impactful in your world. And if we just understand the basic elements of communication, right? What do most people operate under today? DMs, right? Message inboxes, email, right? Sometimes text messages. We give and receive 7% of our communication on the words that we choose. So if we rely on one of those mediums, we're giving our prospects less than 10% of what we intend to communicate to them. 38% is in delivery, tone, and cadence. So if you're only sending voice notes, you're getting only on teleconferences, you're only getting on the phone with somebody, you're still less than 50% of communication. Whereas video, right, leverages the other 55%, which is the nonverbals. That's right. And especially if you know how to position the message that's unique to them. I'm fascinated by this new strategy that you're about to deploy. Again, it's one that I've utilized in multiple businesses for years with a high degree of impact, because most people are like, I've never gotten a video like this from anybody, right? The impact is huge. Now, will they all convert? No. Are they all going to even respond? No. But for those that do, the depth will be felt and it will have an impact. In your plan, your 10K plan, as you call it, what does it look like in the next 12 months in terms of number of external new points of contact you need to establish, whether it's through the video strategy or elsewhere, to give you the momentum to keep down on that path to hit your 10K in the time frame you desire?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just doing the math in my head a little bit because recognizing I don't have it fully there. But my goal right now, and it might seem silly, but is 10 personalized messages a day.
That doesn't seem silly at all. You can knock that out in an hour.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I have an hour that I can afford.
Yeah. 1 hour you invest every day and you do that 50 times a week. That's significant.
So that's my goal. And now what's interesting is I won't get to if you do the math, it's not 10,000, right?
Right.
You know,
not
but
a year,
yeah,
12 months,
exactly. But it starts adding up.
Well, and given the fact that almost all of your business today comes from referrals, of those, let's just call it 50 weeks in a year, what is that, 2,500 touch points new in a personalized email that's a video that you've actually spoken to them, given specific elements that you can see and identify with. Let's just say 10% of those hit. That's 250 conversations, right, that were generated from that activity. Right. Of that, however many you end up converting, but here's the reality. What have you done? You've put at least 250 more people in your sales force to be able to refer, recommend, and be able to say that 4D Strategy is doing something unique and different.
That's right. That's right.
Most people don't look at the extrapolation of very simple actions that way. And I'm happy that you were able to even bring it down to 10 a day, because that's significant.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no. And that's once again why I've been holding back. And I also recognize the other reason I've been holding back is because or am I ready?
For what?
The response. And what's cool is, so part of the reason I was able to go down this path, because sometimes you could go down this and the next, because we work with so many businesses, right? You get excited about a certain thing is but can you process that?
Yeah.
Right? Are you all of a sudden now going to be dead because you all of a sudden have a bunch of unhappy clients that you can't serve? Right? This happens often.
It does.
I love it when I go, do you want to have 100 interviews a week? Hell no. I don't, I don't want that. Yeah. Right? I don't want something like that. But, do I want authentic, genuine, 2 or 3 day?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right? Would I love to have 2 or 3 warm, genuine calls with people who really could use our value? And so part of what has happened is we're always looking for new opportunities to grow. And so how we got to this point of inflection of we can was the reality is this. And so we're called 4D Strategy. Reason why I call it 4D Strategy is because only 2% of times people typically spent on strategy. So the concept is you use those 40 hours wise, and we can help you get through there better. Yeah. That's the simple answer. Yeah. There's another reason for the 40. You could ask me about that later. Okay. But that's what I say out externally. Okay. All right. So that's the core of it. The reality is you use hundreds of strategies to help solve a business. And this has been one of my problems because people suck at strategic planning execution. Only 10% of organizations get 2/3 of their stuff done. So that's why they're scared to even try it. And the reality is a lot of the really big companies, and even they kind of suck at it. Only 20% of McKinsey's implementations 20% of McKinsey's and the big boys' strategy concepts get implemented. Yeah. But nobody gets fired for hiring McKinsey. Okay. Nuts though. Nuts. Right? Yep. Okay. That drives me nuts. Yep. Right? That people will spend time. So that's why we do strategy and execution. Because I can't stand a plan that doesn't get done. Yep. It drives me, to me, it lacks integrity. Yep. So I want to work with somebody that wants to change. We help them come up with a plan how to change. We help them come up with implementation to go forward to it. But the difference is we got the Holy Grail now, what I'm super excited about. So the hardest thing, I got so much data points like you do of transformation. I told you in the beginning, people, you save my business, right? Yep. You double my profits. You double my revenue. It's awesome. There's so many genuine, legitimate. Yep. It's I could do this the rest of my life, just the referral and be good. But once again, I got these bigger goals. I want to get to it. So the good news, what's the good news with all this? We now found a tool that blends in with what we do. We use technically hundreds of strategies to solve a business. Yep. This is the problem with a lot of people. Oh, I'm going to solve your one thing. Well, you're going to have a problem down the road, buddy, right? Something else is going to go wrong. So let's think through the bigger picture.
Every strategy, there's also trade-offs. There's ripple effects of decision-making. There's all of it. There's literally levers. When you pull on one, something else gets pulled. Always in an organization.
Every time. And you're going to run into obstacles you can never foresee.
Yep.
Okay. So you have to learn to overcome them and change and pivot, right? So that's why it has to be a dynamic. Strategic plan is a hypothesis. It's not a fact. Yeah. Let's not be so arrogant to believe that it's right. Yeah. Holy cow, right? It's not right. It's your best guess at that moment. Wisdom comes from changing on the fly and adapting and not deviating from your objective, your destination where you want to go, but you have to adapt and modify and document that change so you learn, right? Totally believe in that whole process. But now we found a tool that we use now using software. All right, those business owners are out there. How a business is typically valued based on EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Minus that. That's i.e. profit, but it's not, right? Yep. It's not at all. But it's the word that
normalized measurement point for valuations. Yes.
That's one point.
Yep.
The other point is called the multiple.
Yep.
Right.
Which varies by industry and business and
size and all that stuff.
All of it.
Okay.
The revenue streams and models, all of it.
Yep. Yes. But most people believe that multiple doesn't change.
The multiples change significantly.
Thank you.
Yes.
But they look online.
Yeah.
And they get all excited. Oh, my business is in construction and I got $2 million in EBITDA. You multiply it times 4, I'm worth $8 million or whatever, right? Are you?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
See, that multiple, you know this, is even though it could be an independent valuation person, what they're doing is they're evaluating risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay? The multiple is the risk of a buyer of whether or not that $2 million is going to happen again in the future of earnings. Mm-hmm. When you can decrease the risk, it increases the multiple.
Yep.
We now have a tool that can calculate that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Dude.
That's beautiful.
We now have a tool. So we've taken our top 40 strategies, i.e. the name. Okay. Of course we had to, right? Branding.
I mean, you have to have 40 strategies.
Yes, of course. But I mean, we use 100, but it was our top 40 strategies.
Totally.
I know, I mean, but it's our top 40 strategies. Yeah. We now apply it to this real-time tool, and we now can say with confidence, you're going to get this ROI by working on this thing. Mm. This is the holy grail of strategic consulting, and we have it.
So what I'm hearing is that any organization that's seeing an exit within the next 5 to 7 years or sooner needs to be talking to you like ASAP, because you can help them evaluate risk and give a future ROI based on their investment in normalizing any part of their business to maximize their exit.
That's right. And this is the best part. When you decrease your risk, your EBITDA goes up anyways.
Yeah, it does.
Every time you decrease your risk, your profits go up. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's super exciting. So it's going to have a multiplier effect.
That's awesome.
You know, and what's crazy is like you change your multiple from 5 to 6. You know how hard it is to increase your earnings, especially in an inflationary period of time. Everyone who's in business understands how hard it is. You can only raise your prices so many times. Mm-hmm. And so let's say you have, once again, a $2 million. Let's say you're lucky and you have a really profitable business, $10 million business, $2 million in EBITDA. Let's just say you're lucky, you have 20%. That's really uncommon. Yeah. We know that, right? But let's say you do. Okay. Now think about that. Most people think to get to 4, you're going to need to get to 20 million. Think about how hard it took you to 10. If you could raise your multiple by 1, you equivalent got you to 20 million. Yep. Right? Because it actually increased literally the multiple by another amount.
Yep.
It's crazy.
It is.
And so, so that's what we're going on. That is our whole thing now is we've been doing this for years, but now we have data to validate what we should focus on, prioritize the most important, have a game plan to implement, validate the return. This was a funny thing because I used to be a CFO, and so I've been the number 2 in multiple companies, you know, in a lot of these opportunities, and the CFOs are a gate in a lot of things, right? Because they're like, so I just blog coming out here soon called the $1 Million CFO. It's way out by the time the product comes out, and of course CFO is going to get excited about that. Like, how can it be it? Well, if you can have timely financial statements that are produced within 10 period days, and you have the information, the margin, that you go through a bunch of different data points. This is just one of, once again, many of the strategies. Depending on the size of your company, your CFO may be worth $1 million or more to the value of the company. Like, so a lot of companies, that's the biggest question. When do I hire a CFO? I now have the data to tell you when.
Interesting. So
I'm just like crazy fired up about this and this is how we're going to help probably more than 10,000 companies. Yeah. Because there's more than 10,000 companies that are thinking about being sold right now. Yeah. And so that's that's how we're going to scale.
Yeah.
We can help people see without even working with us. Like we'll give them a scant, and then we'll go further.
The ability to have a conceptual conversation with somebody and highlight and show them what could be possible. I mean, that's what we used to do in a lot of our consulting world. Instead of having to actually put and produce work product that we weren't getting paid for, right? In a perspective and area, we always had to use that. Speaking of risk and maximizing valuation, I'm going to shift it not just from the business lens.
Yeah.
What is the greatest risk or blind spot or area that you're protecting yourself currently that could make your dreams not come true?
I think the biggest risk is if I don't continue to believe that I can, or if I get satisfied along the way. Let me just be simple about it. I help 2,000 companies. We validate. It's going to be really good.
Yeah.
It's going to be really damn good.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. Okay. Yeah. Are we okay with that? Right. That's what's going to be hard and there's also I'm going to have to make some uncomfortable hires down the road. What I mean by uncomfortable is, so we're going to do as much as we can to automate, to systematize and process as we grow ourselves. But what I really want is a business that I can be not just in it, but be a shareholder. And that means I have to let go.
It does.
So that process is going to be the hardest thing, of trusting that not just me can go through that whole discussion with somebody, and having the confidence that I could hire and bring on the right type of people that fit our values, that care about the results of the company. That's, this. So many companies hold back the value of their own company because of them. Right? Folks, once again, you're listening. You don't have a legitimate sellable company if you have to be there all the time.
Yeah. It's a fact.
Otherwise, you just become an employee of the future company, and you're going to hate it if you're already acting in that way.
Yep.
Once again, go back to de-risking. When you could de-risk yourself and trust somebody else to do what you do in a conversation, like what would be ideal is, I have to envision this, right? That it'll probably be 18 months from now when we're scaling, like we have been scaling, but this is once again, right, whole different level, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to have other people where they have trust that they can do that same thing and have the same amount. Now, in some cases, that might be my only thing.
Yeah.
And then, but have the trust that they can handle that call with that CEO, right, of a company, and that they're going to trust, right, that they can get it done. So that transformation, that process, as I said, but the good news is because we've already, as I mentioned, we've kind of systematized it now.
Yeah.
We can do it now.
Yeah.
Because beforehand it was just I don't underplay this, facilitation, intuition, experience, which was helping us to get the best results. But that's not systematized. That's just my life, right?
Yep.
Well, it's not worth anything other than to me and to that company. But to get to 10,000, I need to systematize that.
Yep.
So other people do the same thing. That will be the hardest thing.
So what systems and safeguards or clues will you be able to track and pay attention to ensure that all of the areas that you just tried to de-risk by telling us transparently what needs to happen, how are you going to do that to ensure that you don't get comfortable, to ensure, right? Like all of the above, you just listed it down, but it's like, what are the safeguards? What are the systems you've got to put in place to ensure that what you're saying right now actually happens?
One of the best hires I made at the beginning of this year was Tanya Smith. And I mentioned her.
You referenced her,
so she's got a PhD in leadership and management, and she's a PMP.
Okay.
She's systematizing the crap out of everything right now.
Cool.
So most businesses and Gino Wickman talked about this with EOS, right? You know, and is you typically need your visionary and you need your operator. Yep. She's my operator. So I got it now.
Beautiful.
Okay. So that, it doesn't matter what size your business is, by the way.
You need it.
You need that.
Yep.
So I got it now. And I didn't have that. Now she was helping, but she wasn't full time. Now she's full time. She's all in.
Yeah.
So I have the operator who's systematized stuff that for me, like pencil and retina, like she's doing stuff I hate.
Yeah. You need that. Everybody does.
Right. You need that person that, like, this is going to sound, and people are going to recognize, I'm going to like, I had to order contacts the other day. So I wear contacts. Okay. That was like building a nuclear bomb for me.
Oh, I totally get that.
You know what I'm talking about?
I am like so incapable as a human being in certain ways. I own it all the time. I'm not allowed to touch my own calendar anymore because I screw it up. Like when you say like it's painful, like sometimes I'll ask for help with something with my wife or somebody in our business and they look at me like I'm crazy and I'm like, no, like I legitimately can't do that.
Yeah.
Like if I really sit down and do it, but the amount of effort it will take for me to get through it and the amount of time, this is the time I should not be fucking touching.
That's right. Yeah. So I, you know what, literally, and it was funny because my wife was like, I was doing that at home, of course, because like, and I need because I don't like to wear my glasses. Okay. So I do, but I don't like to.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm literally down and so I'm reusing my dailies. You're supposed to reuse. Yeah. Sorry, optometrist, right? You know, sorry, doctor. That's how bad it gets, right? You do these stupid things, but it's funny. Like there's these little things that I just hate. Mm-hmm. So that's, you know, thank you, Tanya. This is some of the things she's helping to do because those things are once again going to not enable us to scale, right? So the hardest thing, once again, is, as you said, is to look in within and like, what are the things that I am I'm capable of, but I suck at, right? I'm capable of doing that. Come on. Ordering contacts? Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
Right? Well, come on. Now, it was a process, god darn it. I had to get the prescription, and I had to find it, and then I had to paste it and put the picture in, and then I had to put my address in, and then I had to...
Yeah.
Right? It's painful. Like that type of detail kills me, man.
Me too.
And here once again, I'm like...
Yeah, you can do it.
I'm totally capable, but it... Oh...
I get it.
And honestly, a lot of people listening, they get this too.
Yeah.
Right. So what's preventing them, right, from being successful is that unwillingness to let that go.
You have to.
Right. And so that part right there. And then I said the next big thing will be she's already, you know, a really good operator is going to fill themselves up. They're like Velcro. Mm-hmm. Problems stick to them. Okay. Good news for her. She likes to systematize as much as possible. So it stops being a pain point as much, but still, right. Yeah. It still gets messy, you know? So she's going to have to start delegating too. And so we're starting to do that. We're getting in VAs for some pieces here. Right. And then we're repurposing some other people. Like, so one person that was my marketing thing that we have VAs now do, we've automated. Yeah. That person's going to help me out with the sales process part. But the key hardest thing will be the trusting once again somebody else to be right and be there without me. But part of so I have some goals that I've publicly stated in the past, and you know, notwithstanding other barriers, physical barriers and challenges I've been having, assuming he could go through. Like one of the things I want to do is walk the full Camino. My daughter challenged me this. We didn't do it this year because we have my last daughter going to college and we want to be present there. And my wife's like, this was one of those, you got to be there with me. Yeah. It's like, all right. Like I was planning to do a two-week walk in Portugal to Santiago, Spain. I was like, that was a goal, and not yet. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing is I want to prove probably the following year that I could do something similar to that without answering email. And then 2 to 3 years from now, walk the full 40-day Camino without touching email and still growing our business. Yeah. So you're mentioning, you have to measure, right? All these different pieces, all these different parts around it. And then you have to validate before you leave that you have a competent humans or people or processes that still can crush it more than you can. So having the confidence, once again, to be a shareholder gives you, de-risk your company and enables you to enjoy life.
Quality of life is kind of why most people start a business anyway.
But they forget it.
They do.
They forget it.
Give themselves a job. It's interesting. Regardless of what level an entrepreneur is at, for about 10 years, I've been using questions and I teach them to other people. I have 3 questions before I touch anything. And this is independent of whether or not I'm in a position to effectively delegate or not. And I think that these 3 questions bring so much insight and clarity, back to our point on clarity, in where resources are best utilized. Is this something that only I can do? Because as the founder, CEO, shareholder, you have to live and exist in your area of brilliance as often as possible for you to have any shot at hitting the target. Period. Because everything else lowers your frequency, lowers your vibration. It takes you out of all the things that you are amazing to build. The second question is this something that someone else could do or would do better? Right? Those are the ones that ego gets involved and we have a hard time letting go or trusting, right? And then the last is this something that even needs to be done? Which I find there's a significant portion of waste in that third question because we convince ourselves that all these things are necessary and essential when often they're actually not.
Yep.
And so defining and prioritizing what actually is there, and just those 3 questions, you're going to get a delineation that 90% or more fits into the second 2 questions. And so regardless of anybody's ability to be able to delegate today or not, having awareness of where each activity that touches their desk falls is important because that's where future planning for positions, training, development, and systems are going to come in place. Because the only way to escape those other 2 questions is through systems and people, or both.
That's right. Yeah. It's, we say all the time we're right there. It's people, process, and systems every single time, right? It's like, no matter how complex, no matter how many 40 strategies or a million strategies,
always it comes down to that.
There's 3 things. And what's so cool is you get people from around the world now that we couldn't get that are amazingly talented.
Talent pool's so much bigger now.
Yep. Process, that's easier now.
Yep.
And we thank AI type tools that have made process so much better. And then of course systems. Yeah. Right. And you don't need a million systems. You need just the right systems. Yeah. Folks, you don't need a CRM to grow. But there's a time when you do.
Yep.
But it's amazing how many times I'm not going to be able to grow until I get the system in. Baloney.
But that can apply to anything. I know. Right? How many people say, when I finally make $100,000, then everything's going to be okay. And then you're like, $100,000 doesn't go very far. Right? But all of that, it's like whatever external pinnacle that you're measuring against that isn't where you are today, it's going to derail you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's the whole concept of once I have money, I'll give. It's no different, right? You have to be thoughtful and intentional about where you are right now, what tools are necessary to help you get through either what you're going on right now or to grow into what you're capable of being. And then to be able to systematize as much of that over time to replace yourself as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And this is where it's because I can see my vision because I've been talking about it for, since 2020. And it's fun when this is why you get this, totally. Why you do the big, hairy, and audacious goal, just like you do. You have massive ones. Because if you don't set it, you won't all of a sudden go, and once again, this is technically the 5th year of my business. Yeah. And it's like, remember that 10,000 company rule that you haven't really been doing? Yeah. It's happening, but not at the scale that we need. Right? True. And now it's like, but if we didn't put that in,
then you wouldn't even have the target right now to focus.
Correct.
Because I do believe that people as a general nature fall to the lowest common denominator, which is why they protect themselves in their goals, their visions, their aspirations, and who they are. And they can't ever break free of that mold. Right. Bro, I've loved our conversation today. It's interesting given the beginning part of our conversation. I would tell you we went less deep in some areas than I was anticipating, but also we got a lot of really pragmatic, amazing advice out of this conversation, a lot of embedded lessons and a lot of things that you, by your own experience, have been able to articulate so clearly so that people can access it. As we wrap this, I know that you've got a podcast. I know that you referenced your book. We're going to reference those in the show notes, and I want everybody to go check them out because they're worth listening to, absorbing, reading, and ultimately extracting your wisdom and knowledge. But you've given so many profound lessons and so many amazing thoughts today. I'd love it if you could leave us with a closing thought that you want everybody to singularly focus on from our conversation today, or something new that we haven't talked about. Give a closing thought for us.
It's interesting because I've been asked this question, and I recognize I'm evolving it. So this might be something different that I'll say down the road. I hope it's different. Yeah, but I'll do it as a short combination of things. That first of all, we're all worthy of doing great things. So that's number one. So everyone's listening here, and this is not just fluff, right? This isn't fluff. It's legit, and so you got to believe, right? And so if you can't do it on your own, find somebody, find somebody like you, right? Find somebody that you can be coached and mentored by. That, it's funny. We always hire a coach when we're in professional sports or in other sports. Like in youth sports, we'll hire a personalized coach, and we don't do it for our $1 million businesses providing for our income. Folks, best investment, one of the best investments you could do to get your head out of your butt, right? So that's number one. To set that crazy vision that makes you uncomfortable. Yeah. 2, 3, create a crazy plan. That not a crazy, but a thoughtful. I just said that wrong. Crazy goal, but do thoughtful plans and early quick wins. Get success early. That's so important. And then 4 is you have to go back, keep going back to that original thing, cycle through. Yeah. You see, the problem is often we'll go through this cycle once.
And we don't refocus our vision.
We don't come back to it. And I think the importance of constantly going back, through that cycle of, believing, make sure you have belief, make sure you see your vision, make sure you have a plan to get there, do it. Check it,
revisit
again.
Yeah.
And so that to me is that is the, if you made the wisdom, the brief piece. But this is why I love being on a show like yours, where you have such a reach to so many people. So it's like, believe, folks, believe you can make this extraordinary difference. And get out of your values and out of your head of this is going back to our very early discussion that we had at the very beginning of whatever beliefs you're strong with, they're probably not true. Yep. And that's hard. Just like it was hard for me. It's hard. I remember, I was on free and reduced lunch when I was growing up, right? And that was hard, and so I believed like somebody who is on free and reduced lunch thinks. Yeah. And then I got to that point of quote unquote being middle class and got comfortable. And now I'm at a certain level, grateful. Yep. Things are covered. I technically don't have to do. But folks, you don't have a purpose, you're empty.
It's true.
And so make sure that all the stuff that, hey, I'm like I love capitalism. I love people to be as successful, and you can make $1 billion, hallelujah. But don't lose your soul in the process. When you do make mistakes, ask for forgiveness, because I've certainly had to ask for forgiveness, and I have not been perfect in all of my things along the way. But continue to go back and reach and challenge, find people once again to challenge those beliefs, the parts. So it was not a great summary, but I wanted to and write it down. That's the last thing. Write it down. Write down your vision and believe it. Go back to it, and the most extraordinary things could happen. Yeah. And it's so fun to see it. It's like I'm the anti-New Year's resolution dude. Yeah. Right.
I hate New Year's resolutions.
Right.
I'm a big believer of New Day resolutions, man. Every moment's a new chance.
Right. Because about 6-7% success rate, in a year from now that you're actually doing it. But the things that you and I do, right? You can do it. We've seen it done. Yep. Right. And it's so fun to see. It's so fun when we get out of our skin and we get to that new place and we can look back and go, I did it. Yeah. I did it. And then what's even more fun is saying, I know what I'm doing next. Yeah. Right. Right. So before before you sell your business, before you do, what are you doing next? Yep. What are you doing to make that crazy difference, make it wonderful? And, sorry, I'm rambling now, but I just have this passion for people who are in leadership to be amazing.
My biggest pet peeve in life is unlived potential. Mm-hmm. There's too much opportunity for each and every one of us to succeed, and less people than I would hope to see reach for it. And I understand why, right? There's all these systematic reasons, all this cultural toxicity, all these places of restriction, constriction. There's belief systems, there's literal rigid systems. Like I get all of it. But I also believe that we don't really know what's possible until we start to go for it. And your words are beautiful. One of the things that I see that is interesting, it's an analogy that I heard not long ago, is that if we wake up in the morning and we decide that we're going to walk to the horizon line, do we ever actually arrive?
That's a great question.
You could walk 50 miles, 500 miles towards the horizon. And what happens? The horizon keeps moving out.
That's right.
Right? Now, what most people don't pay attention to is how far they've walked.
That's right.
What's taken place on the journey, what lessons they can extract, and how do they either lighten their load or increase their steps or cover more distance or whatever their goal is, because they're so focused on the fact that I'm never getting to that horizon line. How will it be? How will I ever arrive? It's never about the horizon line, just like it's never about the mountaintop that you talked about earlier. And so this is really what it's all about. And dude, I'm grateful for the chance to spend this time with you today and for you to be here and unpack and show us some of the things within your own life that you've had to not only work through, but you're still working through. And that's a part of it, man. Yeah. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll put it in one thing is navigate your strategy with purpose.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So for those of you that just saw Carl jump in and flip his lid, man, I think that here's the reality. We all have ingrained beliefs that at some point we either realize are real or we realize that they've not been serving us and it's time to update our belief systems. We all have moments where we've got some temptation, some goal that we want to reach into, something that we might be seduced into wanting to take place in. But ultimately, we've got to recheck on our priorities and make sure that our actions are congruent with our intent. Carl demonstrated multiple times through his conversation how he's gotten back to center and how he's allowed himself to continue to grow and how he's going to do that now for 10,000 other companies. Those same opportunities are available to each and every one of us. One of my favorite things to say is that my presence is my present. I am the gift. But the reality of it is that's true for every single one of you. But to get there, it's going to require you to flip open your lid and scan your can.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.